Hey guys, and welcome to this Phlearn Pro tutorial on the Hipster Watch with Phlearn plus RGG Photo. This is the Photoshop episode. I just did a little rhyme there. It was more of a stutter, but hopefully it came out pretty cool. If you guys have not seen the photography section of this, be sure to check that out first, and you guys can see how all the images were created, and then you can see how everything's done in Photoshop. Or if you have absolutely no interest in photography, then you are in the right place. Watch this one first. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of bring everything together here in Photoshop. And to do that, what we're going to do is go to File, go down here to Scripts, and then go to Load Files into Stack. And what we're going to be doing is choosing the images that are included in this tutorial. And these are the ones that have gone through the selects process in Lightroom. So we're going to choose Files, hit Browse here, and then we're just going to basically locate our tutorial images. And I'm going to shift-click all of these files and hit Open right down here. There we go. We've got them all in our stack. We're going to go ahead and hit OK, and we're going to wait a little bit. So these are JPEG files, and they are basically 60 megapixels from the Hasselblad H4D. So if it takes your computer just a little bit of time to kind of pull them all together, don't worry, you're doing everything right. It's just kind of large files and quite a few of them. Okay, so you're going to wind up with something like this, and basically we've just got our watch files and then a couple of our hipsters. The first thing I want to do is kind of get everything sorted out. Like I've just got a whole bunch of layers right over here. We can see it's kind of a mess over here, and I don't really know what's going on. It's just kind of like a mess. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift. We're going to go from the top here, and I'm going to scroll down all the way down here to where we see the guy. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the bottom. So we were on the top, shift clicking all the twos, and then we're going to hit Control or Command G. There we go, and that's going to group those together. We'll just call this watch. And so now we have a whole group that is our watch. This guy, it's just one layer, so it's not a real big deal, but I'm going to hit Command G on that too, and we're going to call this hipster. There we go. And to start off, we're going to go ahead and make our hipster invisible. So we can click this little eyeball here, and he's going to be invisible. Let's go ahead and bring the watch down to the very bottom. And to do that, I'm going to hold down Control or Command and hit the open bracket on our keyboard. That's going to move a layer or group up or down. Now, the next thing I want to do is kind of get rid of this blank space that I've got down here. I don't need it. It's not helping me out, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of it. So I'm going to have the crop tool. So C for the crop tool. And then we're going to make sure that you have this option unchecked here. I do not want it to say delete crop pixels. We're going to uncheck that. The reason is we're going to go ahead and crop this, but if I have delete crop pixels checked off, it would delete what was going on with my hipster down here, and we really don't want that because we're going to have to use him later. So make sure this is unchecked. You don't want to delete your crop pixels. I'm just going to go right down to here to the bottom and bring this up right there. Now I'm using Photoshop CS6. Depending on your version, the crop tool might be slightly different, but the functions are the same. It'll crop it in. Just make sure you're not deleting your crop pixels. Let's hit that checkbox up there, and we're good to go. So there we go. We've got it cropped in. Now I'm going to hit F to go ahead and full screen. Now here in full screen mode, I like it a lot. The reason is instead of just being in a window, and I can't like use my spacebar. If you hold down spacebar, it's going to bring up your hand tool. I can't like move it around, and zooming in just is a bit clunky to me, and I don't really like it. So if I hit F, I can use my spacebar and kind of move this around, and it just allows me to really work through. So this is the full screen. I'm going to hit Command plus a couple times to kind of just zoom in and see what we've got going on. All right, so here's our watch, and this is a single frame. You can see it looks great. Obviously, Rob is a very good product photographer, and this watch looks great just as it is. But it's not perfect, and there are a couple things that we do want to change about the watch. That's why we took so many different pictures here, because we're going to be stacking these exposures together and kind of bringing these together in a really cool way, especially because we couldn't do quite everything with the background as well. We had to take some shots, some photos of the watch, and then put the bubbles in afterwards. All right, there we go, looking pretty good. Let's just click this guy. Actually, this is going to become a background. If you see something with no watch on it at all, I'm going to hit Command G on that, and I'm just going to double click on this. We'll call this BG, and let's go ahead and bring that out of the group by holding Command and open bracket again. So the BG can be invisible for now. So we do want all of our watches to be in the same place. You can see the camera moves slightly, and that sort of thing happens during a photo shoot. Even though everything was meant to be in pretty much the same place, you can see there's a slight change in where everything is. It's really not a big deal. What you want to do is shift click all the layers that you want to come together. Let's just bring our navigator even smaller. You know what? We don't even need a navigator right now. Okay, what we're going to do, let's make all these layers visible. I'm going to hold down Shift and click all these. So all my watch layers are now selected. Now we're going to get an image down here, edit, and then down to auto align layers. Now the best option to choose is just auto, keep these unchecked right over here and hit OK. And again, this is going to take a little bit of time. Now you guys might have noticed when we were originally stacking our images together, there was a little button that asked us if we wanted to attempt to automatically align source images. The reason I did not check that is because it would have tried to align the hipster and the watches in the background, and they're just not going to align. They're totally different images. So you want to make sure you've got all of your images in first, choose the images that are similar, put those in a group, and then go ahead and align those. And you can see it's just kind of like cranking through right now. I'm on a iMac. It is the newer model iMac. This is 2013. It's a couple months old, and it has 32 gigabytes of RAM. Let me just, in case you guys are curious, not that maybe you're not, I don't know. We're on a 3.4 gigahertz Intel Core i7 with 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm on the latest OS X. So if this is either faster or slower than your computer, now you know my stats on how we're working here, and you can compare it to yours, and it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and use the crop tool again. You can see we have a lot of kind of space up here and down here. The reason is because some of these things had to be rotated to get our watch to look good, you know? Like our watch is actually, it's in the same place in all these shots now, which is really, really cool. But some of these images had to be rotated and changed and things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and just crop this in a little bit more. So again, C for the crop tool, make sure you do not click this delete crop pixels. And we're just gonna bring it in from the top left, top right, and the bottom left. There we go. And let's go ahead and pull that in as well. Okay. If you don't want to crop, you don't have to. I just don't like looking at that stuff because it's, you know, just extra information that I don't need to clutter my image. Okay, there we go. So what we have here is quite a few images that we really want to bring together to figure out, you know, where's our final watch going to be, and we're going to bring in and highlight each of these individual sections. So the first thing I want to do is kind of go through these, and I'm going to just unclick these visible. And what I'm doing is trying to keep an eye out on what I would like my base layer to be. Like which one of these do I want to be my bottommost watch? And I'm just looking for the one that's relatively even and exposed very well. There we go. You can see there is a slight difference in between these two watches. The camera did move a little bit, and although the watch is generally in about the same place, that align source images, it's not like a magic worker there, you know, so it can't do everything, but it'll get you pretty close. All right, I think this is a really nice exposure here. So we're at 0092, and it's a really nice exposure. Everything looks pretty nice, and we can start building off of that. So what I'm going to do is bring this down to the bottom of the group. So I'm going to hold down the Control or the Command key and click on the open bracket a couple times. There we go, all the way down to the bottom, and then make these layers above it invisible. So our goal here now is to kind of work on the watch. I know I've got these nice bubble layers, and they're really fun, but we're not going to be playing with those just yet. So let's actually bring those down below that guy. Okay, what I want to do is I want to look through these layers now and kind of figure out which of these areas are going to make the watch just look a little bit better, which are going to make it pop and add a little bit more detail. So really it's just a matter of turning some of these off and on. Now, some of these might not even get used. Like this layer, for instance, really, you know, not a whole lot going on there that I like. So maybe this reflection is a little bit better in this one. Sorry, in that one, it's a little bit better of a reflection. So maybe we can take that area there, but I'm sure we can get that from another image as well. So, oh, this blue is actually really nice in the background, but we're going to be winding up using the darker exposure there too. So if you do come across one where you're like, yeah, you know what, I really don't think I'm going to use that exposure, you can either go ahead and delete it, you can mark it as red, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to show you how to mark it as red because it can get a little confusing when you're dealing with this many layers. Just right click here on your eyeball, and I'm going to mark that as red. And that's just going to say I'm probably not going to use that. I'm not ready to delete it yet, but we're going to see. All right, let's make this visible and invisible again, and same here. We'll just mark this as red. You can always come back and delete these. Okay. and you're like, oh, you're just marking these all red, Aaron. This is great. I'm learning a lot. Um, trust me, pretty soon we'll get to something that actually starts to add. Okay, here's a good example here. We're at 0093. Making this visible, it changes just a little bit about the image. We've got a little bit of a highlight here on the left side where this red area is. I'm not a watch expert, but this red area on the side of the watch. And you can see the highlight really is quite a bit nicer. And this is, as we were photographing, we were kind of moving lights around and saying, this area might be a little bit better for a highlight here. Let's that little light gun that we had, we could pull it into different areas. So what we're going to choose now is we're going to see that, okay, that's an area that I do like. Let's turn this off and on and see if there's anything else about this that we do like. And if not, what we're going to do is we're going to put a layer mask on this, okay? So we're going to put a black layer mask on this. Hold Alt or Option, click on this layer mask button right down here, which is going to put a black layer mask on it, making everything on the layer invisible. Then I'm just going to paint with my brush tool, and we're going to paint white right over here on the side of this. There we go. We're going to go all the way through. And what I'm looking for are nice transition areas. So like this dark on the bottom here, as well as this dark on the top. Those are like pretty good transition areas where I can kind of end my my layer mask there. So hold Alt or Option. That's what my layer mask looks like. Not incredibly fancy, but it doesn't need to be. And we can see we just brought a little bit more detail in there. A little bit of that shine kind of tells you a little bit more of that texture. Just makes it a little bit more interesting. So that's the whole gist of it. And the really cool thing about product photography mixed with a great knowledge of Photoshop is knowing that during the photo shoot you can take parts for each individual little elements, especially if your subject is not moving, and kind of bring them together. And in the end, you might get something that you really love. So let's say we like that blue kind of down there. I'm not sure that I do, but I might. So let's bring it in. Let's put, again, a black layer mask on there. So hold Alt or Option and click on your layer mask. And then we're just going to use a brush tool to kind of paint that in there, that little blue highlight. And then here down on the very bottom, we're going to paint that in as well. Very nice. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit more subtle. And there we are. So you can see I'm keeping the nice information here from this watch variation, but I am adding a little bit of that blue. This is really nice because this is actually, it's photographic elements. I'm not like grabbing a curves adjustment layer and cranking it to blue, which I'm not opposed to doing, but if you can do it, with actual a photograph rather than just an adjustment layer, you're gonna have a lot more information and the end product's gonna be a lot better. All right. And this is, I suspect the people who picked this tutorial up are interested in things like product photography. This is a bit different from editing skin and things like that, but still, it's really fun and unique in new ways. It's challenging in ways that editing people really isn't challenging. It's a lot more technical. Things have to be perfect, and the call for aesthetics is, definitely like you want to show something in the best light possible, and sometimes, there we go. Sometimes that means a different style of editing. There we go. So that was kind of nice with that blue on there as well. Let's bring this visible, and we can see we lost the blue on the dials, but there's a little bit of blue up here. So I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click on my layer mask and then just bring that blue right back up there. Perfect. And this should help teach you guys that you really don't need to make every photo perfect, from straight out of the camera. You really do have quite a bit of wiggle room when you're doing this sort of stuff. All right, making this layer visible and invisible. I don't see anything that I really like necessarily, so I'm going to make it invisible, and we're going to go ahead and make it red. All right, now this layer is really interesting here. There we go. Both of those are. This is that light gun that we use, that really small light gun that kind of like scraped across the surface here. And I like this for a couple reasons. First of all, the watch face or crown or bezel or whatever it's called, I'm not a watch expert here. This area here is just a little bit flat. And I know it has a lot of really nice detail because I saw it in person, but it's just a little flat. So we brought in that light to kind of scrape from the side. And now you can see how much great detail we actually do have in there. Not only that, but the light source is a bit harder from that very, very small guy. So what it's doing is it's creating shadows and highlights that we weren't getting before. Let's just zoom in. This is a Hasselblad file, so it's huge and you can see a lot of detail. Let's just click this off and on. You can see here, barely make out the fact that there are like little rings coming around there, but now you can really start to make that out. You can definitely see the texture here on the background a little bit better. And I do like the fact that we have a nice hard shadow as well, because that just kind of tells me like, okay, these hands are, they're that far off of the surface though. So all those things I really do like. So what we're going to do is make this layer visible. Again, black layer mask, and then I'm going to make a slightly harder brush. Now, if you guys want to edit your brush on the fly, I'm going to include a basic retouching brush with this tutorial. And if you want to edit your brushes on the fly, basically, if you're on a Mac, hold down the Control and the Option key, click and drag up and down. That's going to make your brush larger or smaller. And left and right is going to make your brush, up and down is going to make your brush softer and harder. Up and down. Left and right is going to make your brush smaller and larger. I'm trying to do my best with this exclamation. I'm tripping over my words. Now we're just going to paint white on here. I'm just going to write a little bit of a note. Make sure to include brush. All right. I write myself notes as we go along with the tutorials, because these tutorials, although I do know what I'm doing, and I do have like a very good plan of what we're going to be doing today, sometimes they are a little bit more free-flowing. Sometimes we'll create a brush in the middle of a tutorial that, it's just like, oh, okay, cool. So I'll write myself a note to make sure to include that. So when you actually download the end package, you're not like, wait, I'm watching this video and he said he was going to include brush. Not that you needed to know that at all. I'm just letting you know that's part of the pop process. There we go. So now we have our face. If you want to just make sure your layer mask looks pretty good, hold down the Alt or the Option key and click on the layer mask. So this is telling me that, like this area here wasn't perfect. So I'm going to paint white here in this area there. Now, also, you might be wondering, why I didn't grab like a pen tool and make a perfect selection right around there. The reason is because the watch is, well, it's the same watch over and over again. Like it's, this is the same watch as this layer. So the selection doesn't really have to be that perfect. If I was bringing this in from like a completely different watch, yeah, we would want to make the selection that perfect. But you can see here, I'm going to zoom in and, there's not a person on earth who would be like, ooh, this is not, this doesn't look like it was comped together well, because it just blends very well together. I'm using this kind of like silver edge as kind of like a boundary there. So if you want to do the same thing, you can just be a little bit more loose. And I think that's a great part of editing, and a great part of experience when doing these things is knowing when you can be a little bit more loose and when you can be, edit a little tighter. All right, so that looks great. Now here's a different variation, and it's totally up to, this would be totally up to you guys. You could just kind of decide which one you like more. I kind of like this variation here because of the really nice information that I'm seeing here on these individual, the mini bezels or sub bezels or whatever they're called. All right, so this guy we're not going to use. So this is going to become red again. And then this one as well. Maybe this up here, maybe I want that to be visible. So we're going to hold down Alt or Option, click on our black layer mask. Sorry, click on your layer mask, which will load it in as black. And then there we go. So we have a little bit of balance now. I don't have to include that. That's not like a binding agreement. But if I do want to, that's included for us. All right, in this area too, we're going to clean that up from those reflections. Remember that one layer down there? That's basically all it did was add those. And now I took care of that as well. So what we're going to do now, let's go ahead and put everything together that we're actually using. To do that, I'm going to hold down the Control or Command key. So let's click on this guy, hold down Control or Command, and click on each of these layers. Should be the ones with the eyeballs. All right, now we're going to pull them all together. And to pull them all together is really easy. Hold down Control or Command and hit the open bracket. And that's just going to put them right there. And you can move them all as a group. So if they're all together to start with, you can move them as a group, or you can just select a bunch of them, hit Control or Command, open bracket or close bracket, and it'll move those up or down. Pretty easy. Okay, so now we have our red layers. And basically, we want to see if we are going to use any of these. Like, is there anything in these that we're going to use? This one just looks like dirt got on it. So, no, I don't like that. It's not better anywhere. So we're going to hit the delete key. Pretty easy. Let's make this visible. Do I like that better anywhere? Nope, not really. So I'm going to click on that and hit the delete key. All right. Now, I could have included in the tutorial just the ones that we were actually going to use, but I think it's better to kind of be able to see, the whole process of like, why you might choose one over the other. We're not going to use that one either. This one I'm going to keep around just because of the background, and I don't think I'll wind up using it, but I'm just a little curious about it because it is kind of like a totally different exposure there. Okay. Here we have our other variation of the watch up front there. All right. And I don't completely dislike this, but I do like this one a little bit better. So we're going to get rid of this one as well. Just delete key right on that. And let's click and make this visible and invisible. If you want to set a keyboard shortcut up for that, I use keyboard shortcuts quite a bit. So I have the keyboard shortcut Shift Option Command V will make a layer visible and invisible because I like to be able to turn things off and on real quick. If you want to set that up, go to Edit and then down to Keyboard Shortcuts. Okay, and then you're going to go to Layer, and then you're going to scroll down all the way until you see, there we go, Hide Layers. Option Shift Command V is my keyboard shortcut. If you want to create your own, just click here, press on the keys you'd like to have be your shortcut, and you can use mine if you want, and then hit accept, and that's it. All right, and you can do that with anything. I mean, this is your keys to the kingdom. Anything you do often, I would recommend making a keyboard shortcut out of it. All right, we're going to hit cancel there and decide that we're not going to use that either. So we're going to hit delete on that one as well. All right, let's just shift click all those and group them together, and we'll just call these watch 1. You can call them really whatever you want. You can call these the keepers or the whatever it is. And there we have it. So already we're looking really good. We can see, let's just turn all these off. So there we can see our watch without anything done to it. And now it has a lot more information in it. It's a little bit overwhelming in my opinion. So we're going to go back and kind of knock some of these things out. Okay. For instance, our face is a little bit too blue. It's a black face on the watch, but we put a blue gel on our little light gun. So I want to knock that blue down a little bit. It's not really that hard. All I have to do is click on my layer that has the face there. Now I'm going to create an adjustment layer. So we're going to go to our adjustment layers and we'll go to hue/saturation. Okay, now we're going to be clipping this to our layer with just the face. Now, for those of you guys who have watched Phlearn Pro tutorials in the past, you'll know all about clipping masks. For those of you guys who have not, I'll explain them for you real quick. All right, let me just create a new layer. Shift Option Command N, and then Command close bracket a couple times. All right, here's what a clipping mask does. Let's say we have an area that we like. This is pretty cool. It's like our watch face. Let me just paint over our watch face. There we go. That looks good. Now we make a new layer, and we're like, you know what? I want to put a highlight on my watch face. So I want to paint like that and put a highlight on it. And then you're like, okay, cool. But I don't want to use a layer mask for this layer. I want to make sure that this layer is only visible where the watch face is. So that's what a clipping mask does. It uses the visibility of one layer to define the visibility of another layer. To access it, hold Option Command G or right click and go to create clipping mask. There we go. Pretty cool. Now I could lower the opacity there a little bit. Yeah, let's bring it up. I could grab a marquee tool, hit the delete key up there, put a layer mask on this, and paint black to make it look like, the Apple logo or whatever, where they put a highlight on things. Obviously, I'm just totally messing around, but still, now it's only visible where the watch face is. So that's the idea behind a clipping mask. Pretty cool. And you can see if you've got this little arrow here pointing to your watch face, then that's all you need. So I'm going to shift click those and delete them. We don't need them. There we go. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring down the hue and the saturation just a bit on this face. So here's our hue saturation. Option Command G is going to clip that. Double click over here, and now we're going to click over here and say blues. I'm going to click on my eyedropper to actually find the blues that I want. That's an important step. Find the blues that you want. And you can see it changed to cyans too. And then we're just going to bring the saturation down a little bit. Not a whole lot, just a bit. All right, and we can even bring our darkness down, or our lightness down just a little bit, make it darker. There we go. So we have, quite a bit of control now over the watch face and how saturated it is. which is really, really nice to be able to do that. We also have an interesting reflection here that I'm not wild about. So to take care of that, what we're going to do is here on our layer mask of this watch face, I'm going to choose a very soft brush. Okay, and I'm going to hit Shift 1, which is going to make my flow 10%, and I'm just going to paint there with a very large soft brush in a manner that's going to make everything kind of like blend together. There we go. So now my layer mask looks like that. And you can hold Alt or Option to look at that. Very nice. So we still have that nice detail there, but it's not, it is no longer as blue, which is nice. I'd also like to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to grab a curves adjustment layer, Option Command G to clip that as well. Notice it's going to go all the way down to this layer, and we're just going to click and pull that just a little bit darker. I thought it was just overexposed, just a little bit. There we go. Now we can turn this layer off and on and still see, you know, it's still dark. We got a little bit of color on there, but now we have all that really nice detail from that light source that we added in there, which is very, very cool. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is anytime I am using clipping masks, I usually group those clipping masks, those layers that are clipped. I usually group them to the layer they're clipped to. The reason is because if I decide to move this layer up here, it automatically clips to there. It'll get confused and start clipping. So I'll shift click the 3 of those and hit Command G. Okay. I'm not going to really name like my sub layers from here on forth because it's, in my opinion, if you're handing this off to a client, I would totally recommend naming your layers. But if it's just a layer that's like nestled in 10 deep, I don't think you need to layer all your layers. That's my opinion, and some people will disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. We all have opinions. Okay, now what we're going to do is kind of turn these back off and on and decide, like, you know, what we actually do want and what we don't want. I like these on the side. Do I like that guy on the top? Maybe not. Maybe I don't. So we're going to grab our brush tool and we'll just paint this away. There we go. I like it a little bit better when it's just that blue on the sides there. All right, and turning these off and on again, it's just going to give me a pretty good idea. There's our base layer, so you can see that's all we did. It's going to give me a pretty good idea of if I like, you know, everything that's on that I've done to these, that I've done to the watch. And yeah, so far I think it really does look great. I think we've done a great job. So we're going to close that group up, and let's go ahead and bring in our bubbles, and then we're going to go ahead and start retouching, which is going to be cool. Okay, so we've got our watch one. I'm going to bring this down here a little bit below, and now we're going to decide on our bubbles. Basically, I brought in 2 bubble groups. 2 bubble groups. That sounds so funny. We can decide kind of which one we like a little bit more. Let's see. Do we like the mostly bright? It's quite a bit brighter here, or this is just a little bit darker. I think I like this. I think this guy kind of overwhelms. It's a little bit too bright. This is just a little bit nicer here. So we're going to wind up using this group. So this one, we can just delete again. Okay, so how do we actually pull this in? Notice it's above our watch. Well, what we're going to do is put a layer mask on this as well. And now we're just going to paint black on our layer mask where our watch from above. There we go. Paint black on your layer mask, and it's just going to allow this layer to disappear, showing my watch that is beneath it, not above it. All right, and I'm using a relatively hard-edged brush here. There we go. And again, you don't have to get incredibly precise with this because it's still just a watch that's underneath this watch. So if you don't layer mask it out perfectly, it's not like you won't get a watch. It's, there's a watch right under there. It's just slightly different. Okay, what I always do here at this step is hold Alt or Option and click on my layer mask. And this will just give me a really good idea of what my layer mask actually looks like. And especially like here on the insides, I just want to make sure it's completely black so we don't have like a little bit of this other watch that kind of shines through. Here on my edges, you really don't have to be that precise with that stuff. In fact, it's a little bit better to have a little bit of the bleed from this watch because it's going to fit more with the background. And bleed is just like a little bit of an edge that's not that's not quite not quite firm, just a little bit of a soft edge there. There we are. So what does this layer do? Let's just turn it off and on and see. So we still have our watch from, you know, from here. Now we're just like adding that background and kind of like building that up, which is very cool. So we've taken a lot of different pieces of this watch and put them together to get this image here. And keep in mind, I chose this background just now, but we could totally choose any background we wanted. It really doesn't matter what you're choosing here. It does help if you photograph them all together, because your lighting and your exposure and everything like that will wind up making a lot more sense. But it really doesn't matter. You can really choose any background. Okay, what are we going to do? I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I'm going to hit Shift Command S, and here in the PSD, we're just going to call this Hipster Watch 1. There we go. So we're at a pretty good place to save. Anytime you've actually done like a legitimate amount of work, I would go ahead and recommend saving. If you guys are using CS6, make sure you turn on this feature, which I will show you right now. Probably in performance. Somewhere around here. File handling. Yeah, save in background. Automatically save recovery information every 5 minutes is how I have it. So every 5 minutes, whether I save or not, it's going to be saving in my background. You can see I have 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is very nice and really not that expensive. If you guys have a computer that will accept it, a couple $100 will really make the difference in you having a large smile on your face. So I would recommend doing that. But I usually use, let's see, Photoshop can use 26 gigs of RAM here, which I would recommend. If you guys are heavy into Photoshop, don't worry as much about your processor. Max out your computer with the RAM, and that's going to make it much faster. All right, things are looking great. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is inside of this watch, I'm going to create a new layer, and Shift Option Command N will create that layer. I'm going to hit Command G, and we're just going to call this Retouch 1. There we go. And in Retouch 1, we're going to be retouching our watch here. So let's get this watch exactly how we want it, looking gorgeous. It doesn't have to be the final retouch. That's why it's called Retouch 1. And then we're going to finish up the segment 1, and then we're going to bring our hipster up in segment 2. Okay, so now we have a couple options. I really don't mind some of these things. We're going to be using the clone stamp tool and the healing brush tool quite a bit here. Like this little bit of water, it doesn't really look like water, it just kind of looks like a speck. So I'm going to get rid of that. Hold Alt or Option with the clone stamp tool and go from the left to the right there. And there we go. That's gone now. And we're going to do the same thing here. Let's just get rid of that. Now again, this is product photography, guys, so you want things to look perfect. You know, this is Burberry. It's like a pretty fine brand, and this was a relatively expensive watch. You want to make sure like the brand management, you know, they're not going to look at this and be like, oh God, you know, you didn't retouch this at all. Things are things are preferred to be perfect especially when they're product photography. So what we're doing is the healing brush tool and the clone stamp tool, much like you could do with person's skin, but all these little bits of dust and whatnot, we're going to get rid of. Keep in mind also that this was a brand new watch. Like literally, we opened the package and started photographing it. I don't even think anyone really had worn it by the time we were photographing it. After we photographed it, I wore it, and it was quite nice. But I've got tiny wrists, so it did not look good on me. But still a cool watch. So what we're doing is now I'm using the healing brush tool. So I'm going to J for the healing brush tool, and then hold Alt or Option to kind of sample an area, and then paint it in. I'm guessing if you guys are watching this, you've probably already used a healing brush tool. Still a step that I cannot skip. All right, just this little stuff. And you know, that the whole question is like, we're really zoomed into this watch right now. Will the average person who's looking at this image zoom in this far? No, they will not. They will not be able to see any of this stuff. They won't be able to see these little specks and whatnot. We're not going to take care of all these little things right now. But if you are doing this for a client and you deliver your image to your client, they're going to do this. They're going to look all the way in here and be like, you need to retouch all those little specks out of there. Now, this might not be for, an editorial type portrait or something like that. They're not going to they're not going to do that to you. But as a product shot, things like this, it's got to be perfect, because if there's a slight imperfection, you know, here in the watch face or whatever, it could possibly reflect poorly on the brand, or, you know, people might just think like, oh, they don't seal their watches very well, there's dust in the watch, something like that. So gotta make it perfect. All right, so I'm holding the spacebar down as I move around, and still holding down the Alt or the Option key to sample and then paint. So working pretty close zoomed in. If you guys are, you know, like a little more on the anal retentive side, you're gonna love doing this stuff. It's really fun. Just zoom in and fix things. The difference between the healing brush tool and the clone stamp tool. Now, if you guys are doing this, you're going to need to use a little bit of both. If you're in an area like these little patches here, that's a pretty good area for the healing brush tool. So J for that. I can sample over here and just kind of paint those away. And that's going to blend the color and the texture of, it's going to take the texture from the area you sample and the color from the area you paint. Now, in a case like this, let's say I wanted to get rid of that or fix this little thing right there. You don't want to use the healing brush tool because it's close to an edge. The healing brush tool is great for open areas, but if I use the healing brush tool here, what's going to happen is I'm going to paint like this. It's kind of just going to blur everything together, right? A more extreme example would be right here. Let's just choose a larger sample size, and then right there. You can see it just blurs it together and makes a mess. What you want to do is, if you are close to an edge, take your your clone stamp tool and use your clone stamp tool to make your changes there near an edge. So healing brush tool is great for out in the open, and the clone stamp tool is whenever you're going to be close to an edge. So here I'll clone stamp because we're nice and close to that edge there. There we go. Pretty cool. Let's take care of this as well. Now, I'm not going to do this for like 2 hours here, guys. This is, you know, you get the point. I do want to clean it up significantly so you can see that, you know, that is important, and we're not skipping steps here, but you could really spend quite a while on this, and you are more than welcome to. You have the files if you want to zoom in here, and you know, a long day at work and you just want to zoom in and fix some dust specks for 2 hours. Hey, everyone's got their own therapy, right? At a certain point, it's not going to make much of a difference anymore, though. It's going to be like, oh, okay, cool. All right, what we're looking for mostly are the larger things that are going to draw attention, as well as some of the like global changes, and I'll talk to you about those in a second. All right, looking good. So that's like little dust spots, but you know, but from here, you're not going to see any of that. Let's just zoom in. I'll make this layer visible and invisible. So visible and invisible, and a lot of the stuff I just did, you can't really see. A few of the things we can see, but those were large areas that needed to be changed. And they, yeah, there are fewer large areas than small areas. Now this little guy, that's kind of like weird right there, and I'm not sure quite what that is. It looks like an imperfection to me. It might say something or be a symbol there, but I can't make it out, so it just kind of looks like an imperfection. So let's make a new layer. Shift Option Command N. And now we're going to try to take care of this with a clone stamp tool. So a couple cool tricks here. Clone stamp tool, S for that. And we're going to sample this point by holding Alt or Option. Now continue holding down Alt or Option, and now hold Shift as well. And it's going to give us a little preview of where we're going to actually start painting in. And then you let go of Shift and just start painting. So Alt or Option to sample, and then move your cursor and then hold down the Shift key. And you can see that, you know, okay, cool. Now we're going to start painting it in, and it's going to look like that when I paint it in. So this is a great example for using the clone stamp tool if you wanted to use a clone stamp tool. You don't have to. If you want to use a brush tool, I'm not opposed to that either. Use a brush tool, grab about 20% flow, grab this color here and just paint from the left or the right. Grab that color there and paint from the left or the right. Grab that color there. Keep on doing this. That way you really don't have to worry about, you know, pixels and making sure everything is quote unquote perfect or whatever. You know, just make something that looks pretty good. We're still at a very small zoom here. It's more important that something looks clean than it, you know, has all the details of a photograph. There we go. And let's just paint it back down a little bit there. So I'm going to start using the brush tool here for just a bit. We're just going to talk about, when it's acceptable. Now, the only real difference between a brush tool, well, actually I won't say that because I'm going to get in trouble. Optically, as long as you paint in, what should be there, people won't really know that you're using a brush tool. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not maybe as good as using a clone stamp, but if the final result looks better with a brush tool, use a brush tool by all means. One thing that you will notice will be different is grain structure. Like brush tools don't paint grain structure, but grain is actually really easy to add back in Photoshop. So I generally don't worry about that. If I need to, I'll just add grain back. It's pretty easy. I'll show you how to do it right now. All right, select out an area that you want to add your grain to. There we go. Hit Shift Delete or Shift Backspace, which is going to bring up a fill dialog. Fill with 50% gray. Go to Filter, go down to Noise, go to Add Noise. Hit OK. Okay, now change that to from normal to soft light. There we go. It's too saturated, so I'm going to hit Command U, bring down our saturation on that quite a bit. There we go. I only want this visible where I painted with the brush tool, right? So I'm going to hit Option Command G. Remember that? Option Command G. There we go. Now this is only visible where we painted with our brush tool. All right. I thought I repainted all that. Oh, I did, but you know what? I didn't create a new layer. You'll want to do that. Create a new layer first. All right. Then fill with 50% gray. Then go to Fill with Noise, and then hit Command U to desaturate. There we go. And then change your layer blend mode to soft light, and then hit Option Command G to group to have that be a clipping mask. And then if it's too visible, just change the opacity. Change it 20 or 30%. And now we have grain back over where we painted with a brush tool. So easy, you can set up an action to do that, to add grain back to where you paint with a brush tool. So yeah, really, no reason to not paint with a brush tool every now and then. Plus it kind of makes you feel cool. Be like, yeah, I painted that. What? See that little dial on that watch? No? Well, if you did, then I painted it. All right, cool. So you can see that's just a bit cleaner. There's the before and there's the after. Even this little guy I'm going to get rid of here. And I'm just going to use a brush tool to do it. So grab our, hold Alt or Option, grab a color there, and kind of like fade it in. All right, there's no rule. You don't have to use clone stamp tools. There really are no rules with retouching. This is probably why I like it so much, because no one can really tell you what's right or wrong. As long as you get the job done and it looks good, it doesn't really matter how you do it. Cool. So we can see that's the sort of thing that we can definitely work on cleaning up. I might even clean up that little highlight right there as well. Let's just grab our brush tool, grab that color there. Okay, and paint away. There we go. Nice dark area there. Paint it in and clean highlight there. Slightly larger to feather out that highlight. There we go. So let's click on this. Shift Option Command V is my keyboard shortcut to make a layer visible and invisible. And we can see there's a before and after. So even with a little place like that, a little bit of brush tool, a little bit of clone stamp tool, it is quite a bit cleaner now. And that's basically our goal in cleaning everything up. So whatever you're going to be retouching, you're going to have different challenges. You're not always going to have like little things like that. Not a big deal. I'm just kind of teaching you the principles, and they can be used anywhere. Let's get rid of this little water droplet. It looks like on the side there. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option with my clone stamp tool, S for that, and we're going to paint with a relatively hard brush. Hold Alt or Option as well as Control. Click and drag down to about 50%. And now we're just going to hold Alt or Option. Looks like we had a power outage there. Luckily we have battery backups. There we go. And we're just going to paint in from the right to the left here. There we go. Pretty cool. If you wanted to be more precise with your masking and use a pen tool, by all means, have fun. Sometimes you don't need to do it, and I'm not going to waste the time to do it. So there we go. Already looking really good. Let's just zoom in, and we're going to Yeah, let's use the brush tool a little bit more on some of these areas. Okay, so what we're gonna do, I'm gonna create a new layer. I'll show you how to create an action for that noise, because you could probably like that. It's probably pretty cool, because I use an action. All right, let's just create a new group, and we'll just call this Pro Actions. There we go, and we'll create a new layer, sorry, a new action in that. By the way, I'll show you how to get to this. Noise, record. I'll show you how to get to this in a second. So we've created a new group and then a new action, and it's recording it. So what we're gonna do is hit Shift Option Command N, which is gonna create a new layer. Make sure you have that in there. Shift Delete, which is gonna fill and with 50% gray. Okay, and we're gonna filter noise, and we're gonna go to Add Noise. That looks pretty good, and hit OK. Then I'm gonna hit Command U and bring our saturation down to right about there. Then we're gonna double click on our layer and change our layer blend mode from here to soft light and our opacity to 30 and hit OK. Now I just hit stop. There we go. So here's our noise action. So let's just delete that layer. And if I want to add that type of noise to an image again, just hit play and bonk. It already did it for you, which is very cool. So now when we're doing this stuff, I'm just going to paint with a brush tool. Let's just grab this layer and I'll just start painting with my brush tool, you know, right here. We're like, hey, that doesn't look like it has noise. Well, hit this button, bonk, and then hit Option Command G, and then cool. Now you got a little bit of noise. If you want more noise, just increase your opacity. As simple as that. But again, we're pretty far zoomed into this. Most people will not get this far zoomed in. Except your clients. There we are. So for this little detail work, I just think using a brush tool is better than using a clone stamp tool, because I'm not, like, there's really not a whole lot of information for me to draw from. It's better just like use a brush tool, hold Alt or Option, sample a color, and then paint it in. All right, let's do the same thing over here. I'll get rid of this guy there. Brush tool, and you're like, how does it look like it's got noise already? Well, because it's got this layer on there. Let's just see, make it 35%. And you can also change the size of that, by the way. You can select the whole layer and hit Command T, which will bring up the transform dialog, and you can change the size of that layer to make your grain larger or smaller. You can add a blur to it if you need a little bit more of a blurred grain. You can really do quite a bit there. And I find that with minimal work, you know, less than a minute usually, I'm able to completely match the grain structure of just about any photo I'm working on. Which is nice, because then you could just, like you can see I'm just grabbing the brush tool and painting on here. And it's like, cool, I don't have to worry about the clone stamp tool anymore. Nope, never again. All right, so all those little things that I did with the, you know, let's close our actions. Oh, I told you how to get to the actions. To get to your actions, just go to Window, down here to Actions. And it'll show up. Pretty cool. So you can see those little things. I just did all that with a brush tool. All right, we're going to do a couple more of these. Just to get rid of some little areas like this. All right, so what my goal here with this tutorial is to teach you some cool things and tricks that you might not have known. But also to kind of give you an idea of, like, you know, the detail and what we actually do pay attention to. All right, here's a good area. Let's just shift click those, and we'll just call this noise paint. We're going to create a new layer. If you can see this dark spot here, we're going to get rid of that. I'm going to use a clone stamp tool. So I'm going to hold down the Alt or the Option key, sample right here. And I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option plus Shift and kind of move this right over here to about the right area and start painting in. There we go. So I knew it was going to be in pretty much the right place. Let's just move that up just a little bit. You can use your move tool to do that with your up and down, left and right arrows. So just that little, like, dark patch you can see before. Might have been a shadow or something like that. I'm not sure what it was. Very nice. And that's a great looking watch, guys. I think we really have done just a nice job on that. So we can see each of those changes is small, but let's just see the before and the after with that. So there's the visible and invisible. You can just see it looks like cleaner and sharper and more well refined, which is really nice. All right, that looks great. Now we are going to be doing more to like stylize the watch and things like that, but it's time to bring our hipster in. But before we do that, we're going to take a break and we're going to pull in our next video. So we're going to stop this video and then next video we'll pull in our hipster. See you guys then.